President of the State of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, and his wife Nechama, I will follow your advice and I will say, distinguished audience, first and foremost, our beloved Holocaust survivors, survivors who came out of the inferno, who rose from the ashes and shine like torches. Last week, a very profound study was published that is based on the archive of the Nazi crimes in the United Nations. According to this study, the Allies knew about the mass extermination of Jews already in 1942. It is a striking fact, because so far we used to think that the time in which the understanding of the scope of the Holocaust by the Allies was 2 years later. I know the UN archive because when I arrived there as the Israeli ambassador in 1984, I demanded and I received the consent to my request to open this archive that was blocked until then. Following this new study, a terrible, hideous meaning becomes apparent. Had the superpowers in 1942 operated against the extermination camps in 1942, and all that was necessary was a recurrent bombardment of those camps, had they operated back then against the extermination camp, they could have saved 4 million Jews and millions of additional human beings. The superpowers knew, and they did nothing about the situation. While such atrocities were perpetrated against the Jews, when our brothers and sisters were sent to the gas chambers, when the sister of Esther Meron, representative of the survivors who will speak to us tonight, when her sister was torn off her hand by Mengele in Auschwitz, the superpowers knew and did nothing about the situation. Distinguished audience, what brought about this singular, inconceivable catastrophe that befell our nation is a combination of three things. It is abysmal hatred of Jews, the indifference of the world when faced with such atrocities, and the weakness of our people, this terrible weakness of our people in exile. Has hatred disappeared? No, it has not. And if we are to judge according to our 1,000 years of history of anti-Semitism, it would be naivete to think that it would disappear in the foreseeable future. Beside the anti-Semitism that reveals itself again in the West, there breaks out a profound hatred from the East, anti-Semitism of radical Islam, with its two factions led by Iran and ISIS, striving to eliminate us out there in the open. The hatred of Jews is directed now toward the state of the Jews. Anti-Semitism, this old new anti-Semitism, is prevalent among circles in the West and is prevalent in the UN agencies. Hypocrisy cries out to the heavens. And when it comes to the indifference of the world, has anything changed here? Well, here too we have to admit that the answer lies mostly in the fact that it is actually a negative answer, even though since World War II there has not been another tragedy that resembles the scope of the Holocaust in any way, but there are many cases in which the world stands on the side and does not prevent genocide and does not prevent mass murder. It can be Biafra or Cambodia or Rwanda or Sudan. And yes, in Syria too. And still, within that darkness, there are a few spots of light. One of them has only recently happened, and it is the clear response of President Trump concerning the massacre of the Syrian children. We are not indifferent to the suffering of the Syrians. We have a field hospital right next to the fence that has Israeli doctors, Jewish, Druze, Arab doctors who serve the Syrian population. Israel is treating those patients in this hospital and in other Israeli hospitals and has been treating thousands of Syrians, including children, who were hurt by this cruel war. But in general, the simple truth is this. In our world, the existence of the weak is not guaranteed. When faced with murderous countries and movements, the chances of its survival are not that great. The mighty survives. The weak ones fade away. Our people has experienced it during the Holocaust, and the lesson should always be seen before us at any time. And the lesson is that we have to be able to defend ourselves on our own against any threat, against any enemy. The ones who wish to do us harm risk the very same harm that should happen to them. It is not a provocation, it's not an exaggeration. It is the only way to truly secure our very future. And we are definitely capable of doing that. And I'm saying this with my heated emotions because this lesson guides me and directs me day in and day out. It is the superior goal, not the exclusive one, but the superior and first role of every prime minister in the state of Israel. And I'm saying this in memory of the deceased, and I'm saying this on your behalf, members of the Jewish people, citizens of the state of Israel, and amongst them you, Holocaust survivors who are so dear to our heart, because all of us, the generations who built the country and the ones who continue to build it, have actually introduced the biggest change in the human destiny. We have replaced our weakness. We have replaced our weakness with strength. From a helpless people, we have turned into a robust nation. From a defenseless nation, we have turned into a powerful country that can defend itself with one of the strongest armies. We nurture our military intelligence, technological power. We take great pride in our open, thriving, and moral democracy of ours, which represents and generates impressive achievements in economy, science, culture, in every field. These things give us hope and give us resilience, because when faced with the ongoing anti-Semitism, I am telling you, citizens of the State of Israel, entire peoples, entire nations admire our power and our faith in our just cause, our willingness to defend our country, our creativity, our innovation, that is so deeply embedded in us. And this is a major revolution. A tiny people who 3/4 of a century ago were merely ashes. From this tiny people, we have become a very significant power on the world stage. Where did this power come from? Its source is in the power of the spirit of our people that is expressed and demonstrated with great resourcefulness exhibited by the Holocaust survivors. Last week, we've learned about this, me and my wife, when we met with you, the torchlighters. The moving stories that all of you told us left us dumbfounded. For example, your story, Max Fiedler. As an 11-year-old child, you were saved from death by your father, who defended you with his own body in the valley of death. You came out injured out of that pit, an only survivor. You saw the Nazi soldiers hanging your mother and tearing to pieces your baby brother. You vowed as a Jewish child to take revenge, to avenge their blood. You fled to the forests, and at the age of 14 you were recruited to the Red Army. Here's Max. Max is here with us. You stand upright, proud,